Sir, my statement's going to take about 6 minutes. I appreciate leeway since other panel members had up to 7 minutes.
All right, go for it.
Chairman Cummings, Ranking Member Jordan, and members of the committee, it is a privilege to appear before you today, and thank you for this invitation. I have spent 34 years enforcing immigration laws. I started my career in 1984 as a Border Patrol agent, then as a special agent, and climbed the ranks one step at a time to become the acting ICE director. I have conducted and oversaw criminal investigations into aliens.
The gentleman will suspend for just a moment. We're not allowed to have graphic poster displays during testimony of witnesses. Okay, thank you.
I have conducted and oversaw criminal investigations into alien smuggling, human trafficking, immigration fraud, narcotics trafficking, gun trafficking, and human trafficking, child predator crimes, and other customs-related offenses. As the Executive Associate Director of ICE, I oversaw all interior enforcement operations to include arrests, detention, and removal of those illegally in the United States in order removed by an immigration judge.
Forgive me, Mr. Homan. The gentleman will suspend. Officer, the people who are doing that are allowed to stay if they agree not to do any more poster demonstrations. So just let them know that, and they can quietly be readmitted. Very good. Mr. Homan, your time will be compensated for. Thanks.
I retired on January 27, 2017, was asked on that same day to postpone my retirement and serve as the acting director of ICE by the President of the United States. It was a great honor. I stayed and served for another year and a half to my second retirement on June 30th, 2018. With more than 3 decades of immigration enforcement experience, I'm extremely concerned about the growing risk to our nation's public safety, security, rule of law, and that is all due to illegal immigration. What is happening on our southern border is unprecedented in several ways. The composition of those entering illegally is unprecedented because 70% of those are either family units or unaccompanied children. It is also unprecedented that a majority of those crossing are abusing the asylum laws and making fraudulent claims of asylum and are exploiting the loopholes that Congress has refused to close. Also unprecedented is the attack and vilification of the American patriots that serve this nation as Border Patrol agents, ICE officers, and agents. The biggest problem involves the unwillingness of Congress to address the loopholes that are causing this crisis. I and many others have spent the last 2 years saying what needs to be done not only to protect our borders, enforce the law in a meaningful way, but to also save lives. However, those calls for action have fallen on deaf ears because there's no more interest in fixing this problem. It's about open borders agenda, resisting our president, more interest in that than securing our border. This should not be a partisan issue. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, you should want to secure our border. There's no downside on having a secure border. There is no downside on having less illegal immigration. There is no downside on less illegal drugs coming in this country. There is no downside in stopping the bankrolling criminal cartels in Mexico that smuggle both people and drugs. After all, Border Patrol and ICE are merely enforcing the laws enacted by Congress. The past few weeks, the attacks on the Border Patrol have swelled. The media and some in Congress want to say that those in the Border Patrol custody are mistreated. The holding facilities are overcrowded and there are not enough showers. The DHS Inspector General also said the facilities were overcrowded, which in turn affects the quality of care within the facility. However, this should be no surprise to anyone. Border Patrol leadership and acting DHS Secretary McAleenan have been warning Congress for months that this system is overwhelmed and that more funds are needed so these people can be moved quickly to a more appropriate facility designed for them. The same people that vilify the Border Patrol for detention conditions are the same people that refuse to answer their call for help until it's too late. I find it disheartening that no one here, I've heard today, wants to talk about the 4,000 lives that the Border Patrol saved last year. Over 4,000 people that were found by Border Patrol agents in dire straits that may have perished if it wasn't for the heroic efforts of these agents. No one talks about how these men and women bring toys from their home and their own children to these facilities so the migrant children will have something to play with. No one talks about the sicknesses of these migrants and how these agents take that sickness home to their own families because of that exposure. No one wants to talk about how these agents have to go through TB screening constantly because they've been exposed to that serious illness. No one wants to talk about how these men and women who care for these children that cross illegally into this country, I'm talking about unaccompanied alien children now, cross into this country in the hands of criminal organizations that were abandoned by their own families. No one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about how these Border Patrol agent mom and dads console these children, and it's disgraceful. Finally, I want to address the unprecedented attack and vilification of men and women of ICE and the Border Patrol. These men and women who chose a life of service to this nation deserve better, not only from the media, from those here in this committee and other members of Congress. These men and women who chose life of service deserve more. These men and women are working in extremely difficult environments and dealing with an extraordinary influx of vulnerable people. They are doing the best they can under the circumstances. As a 34-year veteran of law enforcement, it is shocking to see the constant attacks against those that leave the safety and security of their homes every day, put on a Kevlar vest and put a gun on their hip and risk their own safety to defend this nation. Those that attack the professional integrity of those that serve and blatantly throw unsubstantiated allegations against these men and women with zero evidence of guilt are wrong and should be ashamed. Most of these allegations will be found to be untrue after extensive investigation, but it's too late when that happens because the damage has been done. The agency has been tarnished, in the spirit of the men and women that serve are many times broken, their morale is at an all-time low. They have to wake up every day and see news reports and comments from representatives in Congress that they're Nazis, white supremacists, that they operate concentration camps, that they knowingly abuse women and children. Those that make those outrageous statements believe that once you decide to carry an ICE badge or a Border Patrol badge, that you lose all sense of humanity. They think that no longer these people have a heart or they care about other people. ICE agents and Border Patrol agents are mom and dads too. They have children. What they see every day in this unprecedented surge of children and families affects them deeply and emotionally. It is something they're going to deal with every day and will stay with them the rest of their lives. Over half of Border Patrol agents are of Latin descent, and to say that they abuse those from Central America with no evidence of abuse is just plain wrong and insulting to those that have to endure this crisis each and every day. I ask this. Has any of those who easily attack the men and women of the Border Patrol ICE, you ever walked up to one and thanked one for serving their nation? Have you ever walked up to one and thanked them for putting their lives on the line every day for this country? Have you ever attended the honor burial of a Border Patrol agent or ICE agent that died during their job, died for this country? Have you ever had to console a small child or a spouse of a fallen officer? I have, too many times. Have any of these people want to attack the Border Patrol and ICE? Have you ever walked the walls of the National Law Enforcement Memorial just down the street and see 21,000 names of men and women that made the ultimate sacrifice for this country, which includes hundreds of Border Patrol agents and ICE agents and their legacy agencies? These agencies deserve better from the representatives of Congress. With that, I'll be available for questions.
Is that basically your experience of what the problem is?
Well, the statement made about HHS a few minutes ago is wrong, and that's a very important thing I need to address. As far as the policy with HHS, sir, it needs to be stricter. When I was the ICE director, I tried to create an MOA with HHS. If you're a parent and you hire a criminal organization to have your kids smuggled in the trunk of a car or back to tractor trailer, you should come to ICE to get vetted. If you're illegally in the United States, we'll put you in proceedings with the child. We won't take you into custody, but you'll stand shoulder to shoulder with that child and claim your fear as a family. I call that parenting, first of all. And second of all, you got to hold them accountable. In the FY19 appropriations bill, when we finally reopened government, what did the Democratic side of that caucus do? They added language that ICE could not take action against anybody in a UAC household. When I said at the time, if you do that, the number of UACs will swell. You will see a surge like never before because now these people can operate with no impunity, no consequence, no deterrence. And what happens, sir? The record number of UACs coming across this country. If we're really here to talk about protecting children, then that memorandum of understanding needs to be more strict.
Thank you for that. You know, this whole hearing seems to me to be rife with hypocrisy and falsehood. It strikes me that criticizing Border Patrol and ICE and so forth for overcrowded detention centers. I mean, we don't condemn teachers for having overcrowded classes. We don't blame teachers for illnesses floating around in overcrowded classrooms. And yet it's fair game for us to do it right here. And the fault, the problem lies with us right here in Congress for not addressing the problems and instead referring to political theater. And I urge all of us to come to the point of addressing the issue straight up. Mr. Homan, why does ICE not have enough detention beds? And my time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
ICE has never had enough detention beds. And I know there's a big controversy when money was moved around the department last year to get more detention beds. Okay. They said, what a travesty. What people need to know, 8 out of the last 9 years, that same thing happened. It happened under the Obama administration. ICE has
Okay.
never been funded enough beds.
Thank you. The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Cooper, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
So I think just for the general public, we need to understand the importance of two things. The Florist decision, some court decision somewhere. I saw in Ms. Nagda's testimony that I think it's first in your policy recommendations that we keep the Florist protections in place. Can the panelists describe briefly the importance of that decision in terms of protecting these poor, innocent children?
I'll address it first. The Florida Settlement Agreement needs to be done away with. Because in FY14, FY15, under the Obama administration, when the families first started coming across, we built our first family detention center, which no one wants to talk about. And we held these families for 40, 45 days until they got to see a judge. 90% of them lost their case. We put them on an airplane and sent them home as required by law. And guess what? The border numbers declined significantly. It wasn't until Judge Dolly G in the Ninth Circuit said you can only hold them for 20 days that we saw a surge. Because now they know they can't be held long enough to see a judge. If they're really escaping fear and persecution, there's no reason they can't stay in a family detention center, not a jail, time enough to see a judge.
Other witnesses as well?
Thank you. Like me showed up. I helped to build a system of universal representation for mothers and children at Dilley. Once we started that program,
Let Mr. Homan respond to the previous. Mr. Homan, over here. Over here. No, over here. Over here. I'll let you
sir.
go ahead and respond.
The 90% number, Executive Office of Immigration Bureau is clearly, the numbers are clear. 89 to 90% of all Central American families that claim asylum at the border do not get relief from the Immigration Court. Because you know 50%, or actually 48% of those families claiming fear at the border never file a case with the Immigration Court. Once they get released, they're in the wind. 90%, sir, 89.6%, I think the latest number was, of every family from Central America that claim asylum at the border were not given relief.
Okay.
And any system where there's 90% failure rate needs to be fixed.
Okay, thank you. You know, I sat through the first panel and the second panel, been great panels. And one thing I've noticed, I think everybody sees this, and what everybody's saying is pretty much generally accurate. And I think the problem is here, the administration, the Trump administration, asked months ago that we have a crisis at the border, asked for more resources to change our asylum laws and reform our immigration laws and do all that. And this Congress failed to act, and now we have it blown up. What do you think, with that passage of that legislation with resources, what do you anticipate, what do you think is happening?
With the supplemental funding?
Yeah, the supplemental funding.
The supplemental funding was late,
Yeah.
and that's why they had the conditions they had, but it's working. It's my understanding that now children are being moved within 72 hours as required by statute, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
No one wants a child to be locked up in a Border Patrol facility.
Yeah.
The head of Border Patrol and the Secretary said that numerous times.
Yeah, see, that's my point. And I want to talk a little bit more about the Florist amendment and settlement. You know, Mr. Homan, what's that done to really impede, to do what you can act on?
I should have been more clear in my statement. When I'm talking about Florida Settlement Agreement, what I'm talking about when the Ninth Circuit decided that they're going to limit it to 20 days, was in they know that it takes about 40, 45 days in a detained setting to see a judge. They knew it was going to happen.
Okay.
And I said what was going to happen, but I was called a fear monger. I said, if that 20 days gets put in, you're going to see a surge of families they've never seen before. Yeah. And it's happened. I was right. And if you're really escaping death and persecution and from your home government, the only way we can guarantee you're going to see a judge, because we know the absentia rates is out of control. These families, a lot of these families are not showing up in court, even if they file with the court. The only way we can guarantee due process is we detain them in a family residential center, which the Inspector General has inspected many times. We're not talking about Border Patrol facilities now. We're talking about a center with child psychologists, pediatricians, doctors, nurses. We're an educational program.
But you're overwhelmed, though.
That's your only way. That's only. Well, we don't have enough family detention beds either.
Because these numbers have just gone through the roof.
But if we had a true sense of that we can guarantee people see a judge, and those who have failed their claim to asylum because they don't fall within the rules of asylum and send them home.
And it
And
must
I think
be-
the surge go
I'm
down.
almost
We
out of
did
time, but
it worked in 14 and 15 when we sent planes of people that failed their interview and failed the judge and judge order removal. When
I
we
only got
did
15
that,
seconds.
the numbers went down. So
it must be a really challenge for the Border Patrol. These minors coming in with, obviously a lot of them with their parents, but obviously maybe not so. And I've heard reports of recycling kids, bringing back.
That's another thing I haven't heard today. When you talk about the separation that occurred at the border, when the judge first ordered the reunification of the first 112 or 102 children, no one wants to talk about 6% of those, based on DNA testing, weren't even the parents. So if you extrapolate that between the 2,700 people, how many children are reunited with someone that wasn't even their parent? That's something that's going to shock us someday.
Mr. Connolly.
I thank the chair. And the equivocation, the enabling, the rationalization is inexcusable. Is there no limit to what you will justify in this administration when it comes to the mistreatment of our fellow human beings? And do you have no shame about the fact, as our colleague said this morning, it's all done in the shadow of the American flag? As an American, I have a right to protest because it's being done in my name and I don't agree. Ms. Costello, you're the IG for DHS, is that correct? Acting?
Yes, sir.
But we're doing it with children on the border. Did you want to comment? You seem frustrated.
I'm extremely
No,
frustrated.
Mr. Homan, I'm
No,
not calling on you, sir.
Of course not.
This is
Of
my
course not.
time.
This isn't about
You're not
transparency.
at the border.
This is ridiculous.
You're not at the border right now. You're in a hearing room. It's my time. Ma'am.
Thank you very much. I want
a 20-day detention thing, and this is what I'm going to ask Mr. Homan, and we have a court case that at its most streamlined is at 132 days. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it does not. Look, there's only one way. The absentia rates in immigration court are sky high. Anybody can go to the Department of Justice EOR website and see that. Matter of fact, I think the secretary just testified a couple weeks ago that out of the final orders removed family units, 89 or 90% were in absentia, which means they didn't show up. But the numbers speak for themselves. When I left ICE, there was nearly 600,000 fugitives that had final orders issued by judges and did not leave, and many of them were in absentia. The secret's out. You bring a child into this country, you won't be detained, you'll be released, and many won't show up in court. And if they get a final order removal, they won't leave. The numbers are the numbers. So, no, the system does not make sense at all.
Well, and we work toward, I mean, and that, just what I'm saying is when you have a process that can far outweigh what we're required to do on a release process, and I'm not sure these numbers are 100% right, so I'm going to ask I mean, we went from last decade to about 1 in 10 of illegal crossings having a child with, to now we're closer to 50%. I mean, these are what I'm hearing. So is that about accurate?
Mr. Armstrong, thank you. I'd love to clarify the misrepresentations in what Mr. Homan is saying. The data from the United States government is very clear that when families are represented by counsel, they show up for their hearings 99% of the time.
99%.
Several years, nearly 100%.
On day 21.
Those notices
on day
do
21.
not include
On
date,
day
location,
21.
and place where families need to appear.
On day 21, what happens?
What
On day 21, what happens?
happens?
Mr. Homan, on day 21, what happens?
If they're in ICE custody, they'll see a judge, hopefully in FY 14 and 15, when we did this, they saw a judge in about 40 days.
Okay.
That's why with this crisis going on right now, immigration judges need to surge on these groups coming across right now, the most vulnerable, and have hearings quickly. The 800,000 backlog, let it sit there.
But it's
Deal
not just
with what's
judges,
going on
right?
right now.
You need judges, you need other personnel, where there are two different budgets. I mean, a judge can't, I've been in a lot of courtrooms all over the country. A judge doesn't run the entire courtroom. You need other staff, you need lawyers, you need support personnel, you need all of those people, correct?
Correct.
And and without that, what is the actual physical process that is going on? I mean, why is the question it's overwhelming, and it's overwhelming to everybody. And I think we say that, but you have been down there, you have watched it. How would you describe it?
What I'm saying is if you detain these families long enough in a family residential center to see a judge, you have a significant impact on what's going on. And despite the political grandstanding I saw earlier, this isn't about enforcing the law. If anybody in this panel don't like what's going on, then change the law. You're the legislature. We're the executive branch. And the reason when someone makes an allegation about children being mistreated, they're in an overcrowded facility because Congress's failure to supply the supplemental funding months ago. Don't blame the men and women wearing the uniform doing the best they can. It's outrageous. This is political theater at its best.
Mr. Christian Morphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What can Congress do to fix this problem?
They can close loopholes in asylum to make it meaningful. They can change the TVPRA where children in Mexico the children of Central America are treated the same way as children in Mexico. Once it's ascertained they're not a victim of trafficking, they can be removed. And they need to change the Florist Settlement Agreement. And I'm sitting here, and let me explain to you why I'm sitting here so frustrated. Because I'm the only one in this room who's wore a green uniform and been on that line. I'm the only one in this room who found dead aliens on a trail that were abandoned by smugglers who just left them there because they weren't worth any money anymore. I'm the only one in this room that stood in the back of a tractor trailer surrounded by 19 dead aliens, including a 5-year-old little boy that suffocated in death in his father's arms. I was there, and I saw it, and I smelled it, and it's terrible. And I still have nightmares to this day. I was in Phoenix, Arizona when you couldn't pay the smuggling fees. You were tortured. One person was stabbed in the face 22 times because you couldn't pay a smuggling fee. And we keep talking about open borders, abolish ICE, let's not detain anybody, let's let everybody go. That entices more people to come.
Exactly.
This isn't just about enforcing laws, it's about saving lives. I found enough dead bodies in my day. I got a stack of dead bodies here. I've seen a lot of pictures today, but no one wants to see these pictures because they're angel moms and dads. These children were died here at the hands of people that crossed the border because we have an open border. The more we entice people to make this journey, more women, 31% of women are being raped. Children are dying. And I said months ago, if we don't close the loopholes, more women will be raped, more children will die. But it's like no one's listening.
Well, Mr. Homan,
we can fix this, sir. We can fix this. There's 3 things we can do to fix this. In Congress, if they don't like what ICE and CBP do, then do your job. Fix it. Congress has failed American people for 3 decades. I've been doing this job and fixing this. They'd rather point to the men and women of the board, to men and women of ICE who have an American flag on their shoulder and serve their nation. I'm extremely frustrated because what I've seen today is misleading the American people. People are dying, not in ICE custody. If you compare people that died in ICE custody to every state, federal system, we got the lowest rate. We got a hell of a lot lower rate than the city of New York. But no one wants to talk about this. We need to save lives. We need to secure our borders. Nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with a secure border.
Well, I can assure you, Mr. Homan, this side of the aisle is serious.
That is all true. We're not arguing there. But there are policies in place here within the United States of America that go against our values. And one of those is family separation. So I want to talk to you about your beliefs on family separation. And you've been on the record defending President Trump's policy of separating families at the border many times. Can you clarify how you feel about that today?
No, I cannot. As you recognize in your report here, it's under litigation. I'm a part of that litigation. And I've been instructed by the attorneys that I'm not allowed to speak about that other than in a courtroom setting, which this is not.
Okay, so that's fine. So you have said, though, that you believe that families should be held indefinitely until they have a court hearing.
Well, court hearing and definitely 2 different things. I think they should be held long enough to see a judge in a family residential center.
Family residential center.
It worked in FY14, FY15.
Okay, but you cannot comment at all about family separation right now.
Well, I was the director of ICE. If anybody was separate, they're separate on the border by another agency.
Okay, well, you have been on the record many times defending that policy. But I also want to point out that on June 14th, President Trump told Fox and Friends that you, Tom Homan, will be returning to the Trump administration as the border czar. Is that true?
I have not accepted any position with the administration.
Well, yes, as of 4 days ago, you said that you haven't accepted a position yet, but you also said that if I can help this president, I certainly will.
If I can help my country, like I've done for the last 34 years, I come back from retirement once, I'm not going to say never say never.
You didn't say help my country. You said help this president.
Well, helping this president is helping my country. He's the president of the United States.
Okay, is it true that you are a Fox News contributor and have been since your retirement?
Yes.
Okay. And is it also true that on your LinkedIn profile, one of your key achievements was that you removed 369,000 aliens from the United States?
Probably.
Okay.
Mr. Homan, the actions you took when you were director of ICE were entirely consistent with the law of the land, weren't they?
Yes, when someone's prosecuted for a crime, the child can't go to jail with the parent.
Yep.
That happens to American families every day.
Yeah, and if we, as you said, I think earlier, if we don't like the law, last time I checked, it's the folks sitting up here got to change it.
Yeah.
And you've offered, I think, no more than 4 times, 3 changes to the law that would help the situation. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Maybe make it a 5th time. Can you say it a 5th time for this group? Just, you know, because, again, we're the ones that have to change the law. So give us that recommendation a 5th time, the 3 things that we got to do.
If we would close the loopholes in the TVPRA, where children in Central America are treated the same as children in Mexico, if we would change the Florist settlement agreement so we can actually detain families in family setting long enough to see a judge and plead their case, if we can change the rules of asylum so it makes more sense so 90% of the people don't pass the first interview and a lot fewer pass in front of a judge, those 3 things would mean would make a big difference on the border and decrease the illegal entries.
Because those 3 things go to the heart of the matter. They go to the incentive. Is that right?
They go to incentive along with the other things, such as talking about abolishing ICE, having no detention, free education,
Yeah.
free medical care, citizenship for those who are here illegally. When you keep offering incentives for people to come, sanctuary cities, come to this country, you'll be protected from ICE. As long as you keep having this language, more people who are vulnerable people are going to keep trying to come.
Those kind of statements made by Democrats in the United States Congress or in positions of influence in this country, they have an impact, don't they?
They have a significant impact.
When a member of Congress says abolish ICE, when another member of Congress says abolish DHS, when the Speaker of the House says walls are immoral, when the person who gave the State of the Union response to the President's State of the Union says she's okay with non-citizens voting, that all has an impact, doesn't it? Just like the laws that you're sworn to uphold and impact and do when you're the director of ICE.
It has a significant impact, and if this would have been fixed years ago, we probably wouldn't have seen zero tolerance. We wouldn't see the conditions on the border
But
today.
because the laws haven't been changed, because of the statements that have been made, there was a crisis. There is a crisis on the border. And that just didn't happen yesterday. Right? You think about this. There was a crisis. The administration asks for help. Democrats say it's contrived, it's manufactured, it's fake, it's not real. Then when the crisis, the real crisis, gets actually worse, the Democrats blame the administration for the very crisis they helped create by the things they said and the fact it won't change the law. It also might help if we build a border security wall, right? Instead of having the Speaker of the House say they're immoral, even though there's one in her state, it might actually help if we built the border security wall that the American people voted this president in office to do. It might actually help if we did that. Would you agree, Mr. Homan?
Absolutely. Every place they built a border barrier, every single place they built a border barrier, illegal immigration decreased.
Yeah, it would help with some of the tragic things that we have heard about, tragic situations that we've heard about the last couple of days, this entire week in this committee, that no one wants to see happen. The young mother who lost her daughter, it's tragic. No one wants those, but if we did the things you're talking about, we could help avoid some of those kind of incidents from happening in the future. Is that right, Mr. Homan?
Yeah, if I can respond
And
to
you're
that.
you're the guy who has lived it, breathed it, felt it, managed it. You know more than, you have more expertise in this area than anyone in this room. Is that right?
I believe so, but let me
I know
respond.
so.
Let me respond to the one child that died. It's tragic, tragic.
Sure is.
But you know, as long as we're showing a lot of pictures, if I can have just 30 seconds. Here's a picture. Her name is Serenity. She was 9 months old, 9 months, raped and murdered by an illegal alien because of open borders policy. Here's Mariana. She was 5 years old, raped repeatedly and murdered by an illegal alien. Here's Louise Solowin. She was 93, multiple rapes and murdered by an illegal alien. Here's a 16-year-old. Here's a law enforcement officer. I got hundreds of these in my desk drawer. So I've seen tears for people today, and I understand that. It's tragic when anybody dies. But let's not forget the angel moms and dads who I've all met and got to know. Their children died, and they're separated forever. It's not a matter of location. They're dead. And a secure border would help prevent some of this. Sanctuary cities does not help this. Sanctuary cities this will increase because of the push of sanctuary cities. Come to our country, we'll protect you. You can even commit a crime, be in our county jail. We're not going to ice into the jail. So he'll go out, recidivism rates, anybody can look them up. 50% reoffend the first year, Up to 75 recidivate within 5 years. They're in the country illegally in violation of federal law. They're locked up in a county jail. Let us have access to them and do our job.
And I just can't sit by and say that is okay. The one thing we can do in this chamber is we can agree the separation policy needs to stop. And that more money towards supporting the separation policy needs to stop. Because I don't want an agent to kill themselves. I don't want a tearful agent who's in top level, not one that is even at the border. They said, put me at the border, he said. That's where I belong, not here with these children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask everybody to think of a busy emergency department. A busy emergency department in an inner city and a massive...
Mr. Homan, your name is on this. Is this correct?
Yes, I signed that memo.
So you are the author of the family separation policy.
I am not the author of this memo.
You're not the author, but you signed the memo.
Yes, a zero tolerance memo.
So you provided the official recommendation to Secretary Nielsen on for the United States to pursue family separation.
I gave Secretary Nielsen numerous recommendations on how to secure the border and save lives.
But it says here that you gave her numerous options, but the recommendation was option 3, family separation.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the Secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation, of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father from
Mr.
his
Homan,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the memo is submitted to the record for review. Inspector General Costello, one last thing.
Right now, ICE is depriving an asylum seeker, Mariana, of adequate medical care. Mariana fled state-sponsored gender-based violence in Angola and is being held in Laredo, Texas at a facility operated by Core Civic, a private for-profit detention facility. Her 5- and 7-year-old babies were separated from her and sent thousands of miles away to Chicago. A doctor at the detention center said she is at risk for a hysterectomy if she is not released and receive the proper medical attention. Despite notifying detention center staff of her serious health condition, they refused to grant her access to adequate care. Earlier this week, Mariana lost consciousness. Her lawyers and her family are desperate to get her medical care. So, Mr. Homan, in your expert view, can you instruct and advise me how to elevate Mariana's case and ensure that she gets the medical care she needs?
Well, on your first comment about the callousness of ICE Medical, let me be clear in that case that was talked about yesterday, because I remember that case. In 20 days of detainment, they had 10 medical appointments, 10.
I'm just going
And the mother didn't go to 2 of them.
I'd like
10, no.
Mr. Homan, I'd like to reclaim, this is my time, I'd like to reclaim my time right now.
You can't make a statement about
Mr.
callousness
Homan,
and medical
as
care.
tragic as, but we can all agree that it was a tragedy that baby died, okay? I'm not talking about the past, I'm talking about the present, and we have an opportunity to save a life. And I'm asking you, in your expert opinion, what should be done and how can we elevate?
I am not going to let your comment about callousness stand without a response. This is about transparency in the American people, is it not? I'm telling you that mother is given 10 medical appointments, and she, as required by law, should release after 20 days.
Hold up. Whoa. Wait a minute. Let me make sure I understand what's going on here. We're talking about 2 cases, is that right?
Yes, I was referencing the tragedy of a baby that we've already lost.
Right.
There is a woman in care right now
You're
who
inquiring
lost
about that?
consciousness.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure I was clear.
And I'm just seeking his expert counsel on what is the procedure and what can be done to elevate this woman's case, to get her the medical attention that the detention doctors have said are essential to keeping her healthy and alive.
Very well. Let me just ask you real quick. And tell us what you can do, too, to help in that situation. Now we'll restart your time. All right, go ahead. Sir.
But to make a statement about a baby that didn't die in ICE custody,
Reclaiming my time. Let me
sir,
state the question
sir,
again.
Is this
where a
hearing for
person- reclaiming
transparency
my
to
time,
American
Mr.
people or
Homan,
not?
Mr. Homan, I am not revisiting the past.
Of course
I
not.
offered it for context, and I said it was a tragedy, and we can all agree there have been far too many tragedies. You said there's been a lot of death. Let's stop the death.
You can't blame the first death on ICE.
We have an opportunity to save a woman's life. You are an expert.
Contact acting
Pardon
ICE
me,
Director
excuse
Matt
me, reclaiming the time. In your expert opinion, where a person loses consciousness in custody and has been separated from her babies for months, how does a member of the United States Congress get an answer about her case from ICE?
I would make an urgent phone call if that's what your facts are accurate. I would make an urgent phone call to Acting Director Matt Elbitz. ICE spends nearly $500 million on medical care in our facilities, so I'm sure all the facts you presented probably aren't the facts.
Reclaiming my time, Ms. Costello, in your view, what does it take to elevate a case to ensure a woman who is detained receives medical care?
So obviously you can contact my office and issue a complaint through a hotline. You can
To your knowledge, Ms. Costello, did any children die at the border during the Obama administration?
I don't have any reporting or facts on that, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Homan, do you understand that the consequences of separation of many children will be lifelong trauma and carried across generations? Have we not learned from the internment of Japanese Americans? Mr. Homan, I'm a father. Do you have children? How can you possibly allow this to happen under your watch? Do you not care? Is it because these children don't look like children that are around you? I don't get it. Have you ever held a deceased child in your arms?
First of all, your comments are disgusting. I've served my country.
I've
served my country for 34 years.
I find your comments disgusting as well.
I've served my country for 34 years. And yes, I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms in back of that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life were like. And I had a 5-year-old son at the time. What I've been trying to do in my 34 years serving my nation is to save lives. So for you to sit there and insult my integrity and my love for my country and for children, that's why this whole thing needs to be fixed. And you're the member of Congress.
We agree on that.
Fix it.
We agree on that, but I disagree. But I also disagree with your characterization of immigrants as prone to criminality.
People for 3 decades on this.
Gentleman's time has expired. It's my time now.
Mr. Chairman?
It's my time.
The gentleman ripped off about 7 different questions designed to go at the character of Mr. Homan, and Mr. Homan should be given a chance to respond. It was ridiculous, the way he just rattled them all off and wouldn't let him respond to them.
Let me say this. I understand that, but first of all, I'm going to have civility in my hearings. All right? I have the floor.
I understand, and I agree with you.
I'm going to have civility. That's why I was banging, so that we could hear each person speak. I have been very courteous and very kind. Now, Mr. Homan, do you have something to say?
No one in this room has seen what I've seen in my 34-year career.
Very well.
No one has experienced what I've experienced. I've saw many dead bodies coming across this border. And you want to talk about the memo? This memo is one option to stop death. Not just about enforcing the law, stop death. If you want to legalize illegal immigration, good luck with that, because it's going to get a hell of a lot worse on that border. If you say, well, okay, from now on, there will be no consequence, no deterrence. It's not illegal to come to this country illegally. More families would come. 31% women would be raped. More children would die. We're a nation of laws. If you don't like it, sir, change it. You're the legislator. I'm the executive branch, and I've served my country honorably for 34 years. And I will not sit here and have anybody say that I don't care about children because you're not the same color as my children.
Thank you very much. It is my time. I have not asked questions yet, and I have quite a few. First of all, let me say this to Mr. Homan. I have never, and I don't, I'm hoping that, you know, I've listened to all of this, and sometimes I think we put issues on top of issues, and there are quite a few issues floating around here. I think all of us appreciate our Border Patrol and those people that work for our federal government, and I want to thank you for being here today. And I can kind of understand why you could get a little bit upset. I got that.
If that were an accurate number, sir, yes.
Sir, can I answer that question for you? I can put
Sure,
some.
sure.
The $300 a day is for family residential centers. And the reason that price is $300 a day because we have to provide child psychologists, pediatricians, an educational program. The pictures you are being shown are Border Patrol facilities. There's not a cost per day there. The $300 a day is that's an ICE facility, a different facility.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're spending something though, right? Wherever the picture is, we're spending some money. Them people ain't coming for free.
I don't know what the Border Patrol facilities cost. I'm just the $300 figure is an ICE facility.
I got you. I understand. Did you have a comment on that, Ms. Mercury?
I wanted to agree with Mr. Homan. That's correct.
Wow.
Do you have any closing remarks? Because I know that you've been cut off a lot today. I'm very sorry that a member on the other side questioned your integrity, because clearly you are credible. You have served this country with honor, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to have some closing remarks or touch on anything that's been mentioned in the last 30 minutes.
I'll just say this: I've served my country for 34 years, and there was a comment made earlier that I, in my LinkedIn, that I oversaw 300-some thousand. Actually, in the 4 years in my leadership, I oversaw 1 million illegal aliens being removed and be deported. And I got a Presidential Rank Award from President Obama for distinguished service. I've worked for 6 presidents, and I respect each and every one of them because they're the President of the United States, but my job as a career law enforcement officer is to execute a mission within the framework provided me, framework being money, resources, and policies. I executed a mission under President Obama in a leadership role at ICE, and I've executed the mission under President Trump a year and a half. I did my job. And a lot of this back and forth today, and I'll leave it with this. This situation at the border is the failure of Congress to act. These children are in bad conditions. My heart breaks for them. They shouldn't be in a Border Patrol jails weren't built for vulnerable populations like women and children. So give these people the HHS the money they need to get these people to the facility that is built and planned for them. No one wants to see that, but we need to stop the vilification of the men and women who are doing the best they can under very difficult circumstances. I was a Border Patrol agent. I know many Border Patrol agents. And they've shed many a tear of what's going on. I hope Congress will work with this administration and try to fix it. I do. I think we're a country of laws. We need to enforce the law. And for anybody in Congress to say, well, ignore the law because we'd rather not fix it, it's just the wrong way to go. I asked if the Border Patrol and ICE would do their job. I asked Congress to do theirs.
Two things, and I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman. First of all, something that's good to point out. These facilities, correct me if I'm wrong, were not built to house children.
They're jails.
Number two, you have given 3 solutions that I agree 100% would begin to solve the problem. And I can assure you that this side of the aisle is going to do everything we can to work with the Trump administration to implement that. It takes 218 votes to pass legislation, move to the Senate. We have about 198. And I hope that we can work in a bipartisan way because to get to a solution in this Congress, it's going to take bipartisan support. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Presley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Homan, I wanted to, just for my own edification, I was wondering if you could answer a couple of questions that I was unable to get answered during our visit at CBP. Are you aware of exactly what is the temperature that where families are being detained should be at? And then secondarily, what does the heat index need to be outside for people to be moved from tents inside?
I don't know the answer to that question, ma'am. I can say that the biggest complaint you hear from folks is that the Border Patrol cells many times are very cold. They call them ice boxes. And the reason for that is because many of these people from Central America don't experience air conditioning on a 24/7 basis. But I don't know if they have, to be honest with you, I don't know if they have a limit on where it should be at. I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay. Is there anyone on the panel that could speak to a recommended
And I'm not blaming you, Mr. Homan. I don't think anybody's here doing that. What we're saying is we too want to find solutions to resolve this issue.